Now, to the outside world, Johnny Zucker had it made. He was a loving husband and father to three wonderful sons, had a string of popular children's books published. That was after leaving his teaching career. Friends knew him as a charismatic comedy lover who dabbled in stand-up and had a knack for making other people feel special. But beneath that exterior, the shadow of mental illness was never far away. Johnny had been diagnosed with depression and obsessive-compulsive disorder in his 20s and suffered severe bouts throughout his adult life. Last year, aged 49, he took his own life. His wife, Fiona Starr, was shattered. Her whole world fell apart, and she spent the months after his death dealing with the initial trauma while supporting their children. As the first anniversary of Johnny's death approaches, Fiona is channeling her grief into creating a legacy for her late husband. She's paired up with the mental health charity Mind for a campaign aiming to encourage positive mental health, which is being marked by the re-release of one of Johnny's most popular titles, Striker Boy, which is about a young footballer named Nat. Fiona has joined me now. Fiona, good afternoon.
Hello, hi.
Thank you for coming on the programme. Tell me, if I can put your mind back just for a moment, how did you and Johnny meet and first get together?
We met when we were both 18 in about 1985, and it was through a Jewish youth movement that we were both involved with, and we were friends for many, many years before we got together, and both had different partners. And we sort of were definitely friends first. Then we went to Manchester University and we lived together, but we weren't together. And then after that, we got together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you got together?
About 24.
Okay.
And then we got married in our own back garden in sort of 5-6 years later after that.
Well, that sounds lovely
Yes.
in itself.
Yes.
And I'm sure he gave a very funny speech.
He did give a funny speech. He was a very funny man, yes.
And, well, he sounds like a tonic to everybody who knew him, even just from the little I have read.
Absolutely, he was. He just touched everybody, actually, from, the milkman to famous people, anyone. He just would connect with everyone.
Were you aware of what he was struggling with, though, in terms of his mental health?
Well, no. Before we got married, we lived together in North London, and actually, I was training as a psychologist at that point, and at that time, I did discover. My kids know this. I discovered some Prozac in his jacket pocket when I was cleaning up, and that was really it. And we sort of attributed it then to transition, leaving university. He wasn't quite sure what he was going to do. Was he going to be a teacher? Wasn't sure what he was going to do, and that was really it. And I know people sort of, certainly with Johnny, like to think, well, he was, and the media like to sort of think, 30 years of depression, it was terrible, terrible. But that was really the nub of it. And then he had a very big episode around when he was transitioning from being a teacher to being an author. And that was very difficult. And then there were maybe little bits of depression and anxiety when he got book rejections, mainly, when his career wasn't going the right direction. And then there was a very, very big episode in the past 2 years, really, where he was diagnosed with diabetes and the depression, and he was really obsessive, and he was sort of unreachable, really.
And that was the first time he was unreachable to you?
That was the biggest time, yeah. So it's not, I think with all these sort of suicide cases, it's not always a simple story. It's often very complicated and things are unexpected.
And would he change a great deal when going through one of those episodes?
This last episode, he definitely wasn't himself, and we all knew that he was really not well. He was really ill and sort of absent and detached, because normally he was such a loving father. He was so present and funny, and the boys never really needed to do anything other than be at home because he would just share it. But yeah, when he was down, when in this episode, he was really not present. He really wasn't himself.
And how did you find out that he had taken his own life?
It's difficult to talk about, but and I know 2 of my boys are off school today, so they might be listening.
Of course, so please just say what's appropriate.
Yeah. So what happened was it was the 27th of November, and on the Saturday night we had a lovely concert in our local church for fundraising concert. We'd all come back to my house for food and drink, and it was Johnny's birthday 3 days later, and a good friend of ours' birthday on the same time. So we had a lovely evening. Next day I was tired and I went to walk the dog. Eldest and youngest son were out watching Arsenal. Middle son was out at a friend's. And two of the boys, eldest and youngest, got home before I did and found Johnny dead. And they were brilliant. Especially the eldest said, don't phone mum yet. The friend whose birthday it had been happened to pop in to collect his present, and he helped eldest son with that. Yeah. And then I got in with the middle son. So
okay, so this was a hugely traumatic already, but
Yes.
hugely traumatic in the way that he was found. Do you remember your last conversation with him?
with Johnny,
Yes.
yes.
Was it different to how
No,
it might have been always? What do you
No.
remember about that?
It was just as I was leaving to walk the dog, and he said, "Oh, give us a cuddle." And I said, "Yeah, all right, I'll give you a kiss and a hug, but I really need to walk the dog. I'm knackered and I just want some space," because it was very draining looking after someone who was so ill. And he said, "Okay," and that was it. And I went and I dropped the kids at the station. It was just a normal Sunday morning.
Have you replayed that conversation?
Oh, a zillion times. I'm trying not to replay it.
No,
It's a
but
bit-
but
Yeah,
it's something that
yeah.
obviously the last time you see anybody before you lose them, you think back to it, don't you? And
Of
if there was
course.
anything that was there that was obvious in
Of
hindsight, had he seemed different in those few days beforehand?
Well, actually, which I know from sort of the research, he seemed a lot brighter in the past few days, and we all thought, great, things are on the up. There's hope, and I've heard that before with people who take their own lives.
What, because they've in
I
their
don't
own
know.
selves potentially accepted what's going to happen?
That's the theory. I don't know. I mean, that's what's very difficult around this, is living with not knowing.
And you're a psychologist.
I am.
I mean, did that help or hinder?
Both. Everything at the minute I'm living in paradox. It did help, and it does help to some extent, knowing how to be around sort of thoughts and feelings and talking about difficult things. And it also hindered and does hinder, because you think, I feel completely useless and unable to do anything sometimes. And I think, well, I should have known better with Johnny. I'm a psychologist. I should know better. So it's both. Everything is sort of paradoxical.
How are you doing in this grieving process then, for you yourself, before we talk about the boys?
Well, for me, I think this campaign is good distraction. But I have been really working hard at grieving, actually. Well, not work. I'm very open about grieving. I'm very into talking about it with anyone, because I think it's very important for me to move on. I have to be open. I know everyone is different, but for me, I'm just crying the whole time. I have gone back to work now because I lecture at university.
Right.
But I'm not doing any clinical work because I'm not sort of strong enough in myself to do that.
And how are your boys?
The boys are, they're amazing, actually. Soon after Johnny died, we all slept together for a month, 6 weeks. We were like little lion cubs, all in my bed.
Oh.
And very slowly, they each peeled off and they went back to their own beds. And probably after a month or two, and then they've gone back to school. They're doing really well academically, not brilliant, but really, really well. They've got their friends. They go to the football. They're doing amazingly.
Were they part of the idea to re-release his book, Striker Boy?
Definitely. The idea came from my first cousin, who is a sports broadcaster, who helped Johnny sort of come up with some of the names, some of the characters in the book. And then the boys have been really involved with it. My eldest has edited the audio book. The middle one, we've been involved with photos. It's sort of like a family project, and it keeps Johnny alive. And they love that book. We've read Striker Boy. All of us read it loads and loads of times.
And
So
what
it's
are
part
you
of it.
all trying to achieve together, your little lion pack?
I know. I think, there's lots of threads, lots of things we're trying to achieve. One is to sort of open, like lots of other people are trying to do, open the dialogue and discourse around mental health, particularly around suicide, I think, which is like the last taboo. And if you think that suicide is the biggest killer of men between 29 and 50, then there's all these shattered families left behind, and they have got all their issues and stuff to deal with. So it's sort of, we also want to pass on, really, I suppose the main thing is about Johnny's writing. He was so inspirational in helping boys really to discover reading. I had a kid approach me in the park only yesterday saying, "I've just bought Striker Boy. It's brilliant. I love reading." And the mum was so pleased. And there's thousands of letters actually in my cupboard from parents who are sort of saying, "Oh, my boy started reading Striker Boy. It's changed his attitude to reading. It's a real page turner." And that's the other part of it, is to sort of encourage people to read as well as think about mental health.
And for you and your boys, it keeps their dad alive, your husband alive.
Absolutely. It's a bit of light. It's a terrible place to be in this place. But all this campaign has just brought us so much love, really. I know no one really likes to talk about that. But love and light in a time of real darkness for all of us. So if it's helping us, then that's good.
Fiona, you've got a lovely way with you, I must say, giggling as well as dealing with some of the worst things you've probably ever had to say or think about. And you're doing it on national radio, so I appreciate you very much for coming on and doing that. It takes immense bravery and generosity of spirit. So Fiona Starr, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best of luck with the campaign. The Striker Boy is being re-released in partnership with the mental health charity Mind. You can find out more on the website. Good luck, Fiona.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Emma.